everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day 3 of the holiday card series for 2017. Today I'm using the boxed greetings stamp set from Paper Smidges, and I thought it would be really fun to stamp and emboss the greeting and then paint some watercolor flowers around the greetings. So I'm going to try out this watercolor paint set. This is from Joy Art. They sent this set along to me for me to try out, and I thought I would give it a try because it's a fairly inexpensive watercolor set, especially because it's tube watercolors. They're not in pans. So if any of you have been wanting to try out a tube watercolor set, this is very affordable. It's around $15 on Amazon, and you get 24 different colors. It also comes with 3 brushes. These brushes are fairly inexpensive, so you probably will want to upgrade to a higher quality brush at some point, but they're great for beginners. If you're just starting out with watercolor, this would actually be a pretty great set to get your feet wet. So I'm going to use one of the brushes today just to do some swatches, and in fact, I'm going to show you my swatches for this set because it's how I determined what colors I would be using on the cards for today. And I say cards because I'm doing multiple cards, and I don't know if you can tell, my voice is a little bit funny. I had a cold last week. I think I may have mentioned it online or even in one of the videos, and it full bloomed into a sinus infection and an ear infection. So I don't know what I was thinking, like, oh, you're sick, you have to fill some cards. Let's make 6 cards. I should have just done 1, but that's okay. I now have 6 holiday cards to send. So before I got to the cards, I thought I'd better go ahead and swatch all these colors so that I know what they look like before I start painting with them. Because they're in tubes and not in pans, it's hard to kind of envision what the colors are, especially because there's no, like, you can't physically see the watercolor itself. So they come in tubes like this. They're actually, I think they're 14 mil, and they have a cap that you can turn over and it punctures the metal that keeps it closed. And then you just squirt out just a tiny, tiny bit onto a palette, and then you can wet that with a damp brush. So I'm using the brush that comes in that set, and I'm just going to go ahead and add some color onto each one of these squares. Now the colors are pretty vibrant. They do dry back quite a bit. Compared to higher quality paints, they don't have quite as much saturation, quite as much pigment, but I think for the price, the quality is actually pretty great. So if you want a nice set like this, go ahead and go for it. I think this is actually a great option. So I wanted to show you this crimson red because once I saw this red color, I was like, this is the Christmas red that I'm using. I kind of want to label it Christmas red instead of crimson red because it's the most perfect red color. And if you don't add too much water, it doesn't turn pink right away. Some reds can really look pink unless you're careful. And this one worked really, really well. If you're looking for a vibrant, bright red, the crimson red from this set is actually really good. So the palette that I'm using today is actually a butcher tray. You can get them on Amazon. This is what it looked like after I got all my colors painted. I'll link it in the supplies below if you want to pick up a little palette like this, but you could use anything. You could use a paper plate, you could use a ceramic plate, you could use anything that has a pretty flat surface. So I picked a few different colors from that selection of paints, and I'll share with you what colors I used here in a minute. But I have 6 sheets of Arches cold pressed watercolor paper. I've cut them down to 5 inches wide by 3 3/4 tall, and so it's basically half an inch shorter in each dimension compared to a finished size card. And I'm putting the greeting stamp in my Misty tool, and then I'm inking it up with Versamark, and I'm going to stamp that down twice. And I did prep my watercolor paper with an anti-static powder tool before I did this. So since I'm doing 6 cards, I'm going to have 3 different greetings and 2 of each greeting. So I'm just mounting that in my Misty tool once, and then I'll stamp it on 2 of these watercolor panels, and then I'll switch up the greetings. I'm using some antique gold embossing powder from Simon, and I'm just sprinkling that on and shaking off the excess. And the great thing about using an embossing powder instead of just a regular black ink for this is that any watercolor that comes up and touches the embossing powder will be repelled. It will resist any of that watercolor on top. So I'm starting out with the crimson red color, and I did not add very much water to this because I wanted a very vibrant red. And I'm pressing down my brush tip so that I get a really fanned out petal effect. This is how I do leaves and petals on flowers, and it's really a really simple way. And you don't have to be really accurate with like the leaf or petal shapes, because once you put these together and you have a few different colors, they start to look like flowers without even having to be really precise. So I started out with this crimson red shade, and I wanted to go through and paint all of the red areas, all of these large red flowers, before moving on to other sections. And I'm going to paint this, I'm going to paint all 6 of these in this same manner, where I'm doing one element on all 6 panels, and then I'll move on to another element. So, and I'm going to come in with a green shade, and this is the Hooker's Green, and I'm doing like a little branch with leaves. And like I showed before, I'm just pressing my brush down so that I can get a nice leaf shape. And by the way, this is a Royal & Langnickel watercolor brush. This is from their Zen line, and this is a round number 4. So it's a fairly small brush. I am doing small florals, so I don't need anything really big. So I'm also doing kind of like a little pine needle branch or twig, and I'm just adding that up there in the corner. I'm going to do a couple other like traditional green leaves. They're going to be around the red flowers. And I'm just going to add these on. And then I'm going to go through and paint all of these elements on the other 6 panels. And each one looks just a little bit different because I'm kind of adapting how I'm doing it each time I go. And I also varied where all of these elements were placed from one design to another. So you notice that these branches with leaves are in different places depending on the different greetings. So the other colors that I used on these panels, this little bit of a brighter green, that's actually emerald green, and it was almost too bright. So I did mix it with a little bit of that Hooker's Green, just so it would tone it down just a little bit. And then you'll also see here in a minute that I'm going to bring kind of more of a bluish, almost teal green shade, and that is the color Viridian. And I just wanted different tones of green so that I could have a variation in color. I'm also going to bring in some yellow ochre, and I'm mixing that with a little bit of that Hooker's Green so that it tones back the yellow a little bit, but to get more of a yellowish green shade. And I use that for these kind of little twig branches that have berries on the end. And I use that same red color for the berries. And then I brought in a tiny bit of lemon yellow in the centers of the flowers, but I ended up actually mixing that with yellow ochre because it was a little bit too bright yellow for kind of the different tone of this card panel here. So I'm almost done with all of the watercolor. I'm just finishing up adding in some yellow ochre, little berries and dots, just to fill out some of those spaces because they look like they had gaps. And so adding little dots or berries in is a great way to fill in any gaps that you might find on your project when you're doing it like this. So I'm going to set these watercolor panels aside to dry, and then when they were all dry, I kind of pressed the edges of them into a Versamark pad. And I've done this technique in videos in the past. I've done it specifically in the holiday card series in the past, and I really love the look of this. I'm adding the Versamark ink on the edges and then dipping the edge into some gold embossing powder, and then I will heat set that, and then the result is like a nice gold edge around all of your watercolor. And it's kind of like a way of adding a gold border or mat on your card without having to add an additional layer. So it's a great way to bring in that gold from the gold embossed greeting. So I'm using some cardstock from Gina K Designs. This is the Autumn Rainbow pack that is sold at Simon Says Stamp, and you actually get 3 sheets of all the colors, but I'm just going to use 1 sheet of this red, a craft shade, and then this nice green, and it just worked out really well with my color palette. So I'm adhering these down onto the card bases with some foam adhesive, and that finishes all of the cards for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I will be back on Wednesday with day 4 of the holiday card series. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very, very soon.